Hi, welcome. Here's a quick overview of what you get in the Combat Patrol playtest pack. Okay, you have 6 maps, these maps here, that are approximately 18 inches by 18 inches with a hex grid. We have a range of 1-inch markers, okay, they're for the soldiers. We have 3/4-inch markers, which are the activation chits. And we have 1/2-inch markers, which we call bits of information for the game. So let's have a look at each one of those in a little bit more detail. Okay, so have a look at each of these in a little bit more detail. Now, a soldier counter. Here we go. This is Grenadier Nadal. You can see he's armed with a rifle. He has 1 grenade symbol, which shows that he's sort of just average a great grenade ability. If you have 2 grenade symbols, such as Fisher here, it means you're more efficient at throwing grenades. Most of the counters have 2 numbers. The top number, the red number, that's your combat skill. So they're the number of dice, because it's a bucket of dice system you add to a shot. So a rifle is a 3 dice weapon. He has a skill of 2, so there'll be 2 dice added to his roll. So he'd roll 5 dice, and there's various modifiers for this during the game. The second number, the green number, is the initiative rating. This is the ability of a soldier to think and act on their own. The Dale's only got 1, which is the lowest one you can have. So that means if he wants to take a reaction test or do something involving his initiative, he will roll 1 dice and he needs a 6. So obviously, not a huge chance of him reacting so much. Okay, some soldiers have values of 2 and 3 get pretty good. Probability moves up a fair bit. This is the offensive stance. We flip the soldier over for the defensive stance, which shows a prone character, and again exactly the same information, but you notice there isn't a grenade marker because you cannot throw grenades when you are in a defensive stance. We have a top-down soldier. He's standing in an offensive stance and lying down in a defensive stance. That's really just to give an indication of what the soldier might be doing. It doesn't mean they actually are lying down or standing up. Basically, if a soldier is in an offensive stance, he's looking around, he's trying to take an offensive action, he'll be ready to take a shot. In defensive stance, you'll be using as much cover as you can. Okay, you still might be able to shoot. For instance, this bit here we have is an bit of open ground. If a soldier's in a defensive stance, he's hunkering down as much as possible, but still has the ability to shoot. If I move the board a little bit this way, you can see we have some rubble here. If a soldier's in a defensive stance with rubble, they're just completely hiding as much as possible. So it's more soldiers' attitude and what they're actually doing. So defensive stance, using as much cover as possible, might be able to do some shooting, maybe not. Offensive stance, still using cover, but is putting themselves out there, okay, looking around, making sure they can see everything. Okay, so they're the soldiers. For each soldier, there is a activation counter. Now previously these were cards, so we've moved on to using counters. So I'm sure I've got the Dow in here somewhere. Here he is. If you printed off counters before, don't need to print anything off, use the order chits. Okay, the order counters, because they've sort of been changed as well. So the order counters look the same as this really. In fact, this is an order counter. I've just called it an activation counter, but it does the same thing. Okay, single-sided. Just on the back of mine, it's got a nice little Combat Patrol. Oh, it's going to be too blurred. Combat Patrol written over the back of it, but you know, it doesn't have to have anything written on the back for the playtest. Okay, so that's your counters. Other counters we have in the game, we have leaders. Okay, leaders are exactly the same in terms of name, weapon, grenades, offensive, defensive stance, but they have, in addition to this, a blue number, which is their command rating. Leaders are essential to this game really. So we've got here Fisher, who's a lieutenant rank, and he has, I've got that round up that way down for you. There we go. And he has a command rating of 2, which means during a turn he can give out 2 commands. Okay, we'll look at command structure in a moment. We look at a little scenario I'm going to show you in a moment. We've got Sergeant Clark of the US. He's got a command rating of 3. Okay, so a better command, actually a lot better. Those one's extra commands can make a big difference. And it goes up to 4, but 1, 2 and 3 are sort of the most common ones. Okay. Other counters we have in the game. We have a collection of combat effect chits, which are again double-sided, so there's combat effect on one side, and the other side has whatever it is. We've got killed in action, what we've got on that one, shaken, which is effectively a sort of non-result. Got a light wound, if I can find one, serious wound, and there's a suppressed in there somewhere. So there's 4, there we are, there's 5 different counters you can choose. And there's a mix of those, there's more of the less fatal ones than others, and I'll show you how those are used. But they're designed to work well with the 1-inch counters. So a combat effect chit can go on the counter, but you can still see all the important information around it as well. And sometimes these are revealed and sometimes not. We'll talk a little about that in a moment. Other counters we have, you notice there are grenade counters. These are double-sided. They've got stick grenade, German stick grenade on one side and an allied pineapple on the other. And you can use either side. At the beginning of a scenario, it'll tell you how many grenades each side has. So in this little sample we're going to play, the Germans start with 4 grenade counters and you just place them on the side and use them as you go along. Now, one of the changes from the previous version with having the elimination of cards is we now have a card and grenade track, sound track here. So what happens is when a grenade is thrown, a dice is rolled to see how long the delay is going to be. Okay, it's on there. We've got a delay of 4. If I'd thrown this grenade here, number 3, and it's landed here, we've seen whether it's deviated. I'll talk about a little bit of that later. But say it hasn't, it's landed there, it's its final position, delay of 4. I'll find another grenade counter with a 3 on. Here we go. And I place it on the 3 track. And before any counters are pulled from the chip pull system, this ticks down 1. So pull a counter, get ready to pull the next one, tick, pull a counter. Okay, before you pull the next counter it goes into the explosion, then you resolve the effects. And having this chart has also allowed us to include a turn marker so we can record the turns that are going on. Do just roll 1 dice for a grenade, which means it can only go as 6. The reason we've got the double track there is satchel charges, use 2. So not as often used, but it is there. Other bits of counters we have, well, we have a whole stack of, if I bring them over here, a whole stack of sort of information counters. The files for these are double-sided, but if you want to do them single-sided, it doesn't make a lot of difference. We'll see we have some wound counters that are in black. I'll explain more about those in later. Rubble counters with an arrow pointing where the rubble is. Assist counters, upper level. Reacted counters, unarmed. We've got a mortar counter there, destroyed and in good condition. Reload counters. What they call them, opportunity action counters, and various other sort of standard sort of stuff that I imagine you've sort of seen before. So there's a whole stack of those. Let me get those out of the way. Let's have a look at some of the mechanics then. Line of sight. Okay, the system does use a slightly different line of sight system than many other games. And it's caused a bit of discussion on the various websites that the game's been posted about. Why are these funny sort of hex and vertices used? Well, there is a purpose for it. So let me just clear these up. Let me just clear all these counters off here so I can move my ball around. Okay, so if I let's move the counter there. Okay, the ball to there. So we can see we've got various hexes with different colours. Now the basic ones are black, and when I place a counter's placed so it's facing 2 vertices here, and these are called the sighting points. And here we are, Sergeant Clark's line of sight is taken from either of his 2 sighting points, okay, to the 2 sighting points of an enemy. Okay, so this sighting point, I'll trace it to there to see if there's line of sight, or I could alternatively trace that one. You can use either one, it can go to either of them, okay, so it gives you a couple of different options. So that's the sighting point, and normally your sighting points are often black, okay. Black sighting points just means there's no particular benefit to that at all. When we look at doors and windows, if I move this across to get the house into it, And this is the one building that's sort of a 45-degree angle. I've only done one of these because they are they're not more complicated, but it does look easier with the straightforward ones. But I'll show you this one. So here's our counter. We can see this doorway here has a red vertex. Oh no, you can't see that. Let's move that so you can see it. There we go. You can see this has a red vertex. So that means if Sergeant Clark has that red vertex as one of his sighting points, okay, whether he's inside the building or outside the building, he can use that doorway for cover. So any fire coming in his line of sight, from his line of sight when he has a vertex, gives him cover. So a doorway gives him obviously loads and loads of cover. It's very good, you know, it's heavy, it's called heavy cover in the game. So that's where the vertex is there. Obviously here, there's not one. He's got a green vertex here. This green vertex is just telling you about this rubble. Okay, so that just tells you if you have a green vertex and the fire comes again from line of sight across the rubble, you can gain some cover. The only other different ones we have here, we've got the same here of a window. Let me just move the board across so you can get the window in. There we go. So a window here, sort of hiding a bit in this flower bed here. And again, it's the same. If he's here at the window with the red vertex, he can see out here. Now, you might be able to see, I'm going to knock everything off the table, I can't move this anymore, here we go. You can see here we have a yellow, whoops, knew it was going to go. A yellow vertex. Okay, this is called a corner vertex because it's on the corner of this building. And again, a soldier can use corner cover, say Clark is outside the building. If he has that yellow vertex as one of his sighting points, you see he hasn't when he's facing that way, but if he's facing towards the corner of one of his sighting points, he can use corner cover. And again, within his line of sight over here, he's going to gain a lot of cover. Obviously if he's shot from behind out of his line of sight, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. Other colours we have, there's not many. Like you saw the green colour already, and you can see on the wood pile here, here we go, on the wood pile they are yellow, so again, corner cover, gives a nice 90-degree corner cover there. Obviously if he's shot from anywhere over here, doesn't get any cover for that. And there is other waist height objects, such as the stone wall here. Okay, so stone walls are slightly different. If he's got two green vertexes, okay, that he's facing, he gets heavy cover from any fire, obviously coming from his line of sight that crosses the depiction of the wall. If he only has one, okay, he's not using the cover quite as well. Okay, so in this case, he would only get medium cover. All this and examples of it are on the play aid. Now the play aid probably does need updating a little bit, but all that information is actually relevant and quite useful. Okay. In fact, when we play, it's all we ever use. So that's the board and the vertices, and why they're different colours. The only other one that we've got is a white. Now if you printed out some of the earlier boards, they don't have the white. It doesn't make any difference. It's just to help identify that that's a tree trunk. And in combat patrol, that's called spot terrain. So spot terrain, again, when a soldier's using it, it helps them if fire comes from their line of sight, gives them protection. But obviously, if they're shot from behind, they're supposed to be sort of hiding behind the tree trunk there, so it doesn't give them any benefit. That's a short sort of introduction to the different types. We're doing an example of play in a moment, so it'll make it a little bit clearer. And like I say, lots of examples on the play aid. Get it out, have a look at those. Hopefully that'll make it a lot clearer. Okay, there are 4 different levels that are used in combat patrol. We have ground level, which is obviously the floor level here. We have depressions, which we have on the stream map. Okay, they're obviously a layer below this. There was something called waist height. So shrubs, fences and walls, anything you can imagine that would be up to about your waist is called a waist height object. We then have a head height object, such as this object here. Okay, so that will completely conceal character behind it even when they're in an offensive stance. And then we have a tall object. And the tall objects are really buildings. The addition we have are something called tree canopy. Not really many trees shown on here, but tree canopy has some effect when we're tracing things